Hello, everyone. Compliment of the season. It's a season of celebration for us and our families. And the great news is we are done with the book Who Moved My Cheese? In our last episode, I said we're going to just, look on some experiences, some real life experiences that people had about the book. And I'm just going to read through those experiences from different people and how they were honest enough to say, oh, okay, I was Hem in this story, I was Haw in this story, I was Sniff, or I was Scurry. So I'm just going to pick just a few people's experiences and share with us. Yeah, because there are lots of it. Okay, so this was a gathering of people who basically talked about the book Who Moved My Cheese, and it was time for them to be honest with themselves and say, okay, where do I fall in the story? That evening, as they gathered in a hotel lounge, they began to kid each other about finding their cheese and seeing themselves in the maze. Then Angela asked the group good-naturedly, so who were you in the story? Sniff, Scurry, Hem, or Haw? Carlos answered, well, I was just thinking about that this afternoon. I clearly remember a time before I had my sporting goods business, when I had a rough encounter with change. I wasn't Sniff. I didn't sniff out the situation and see the change early. And I certainly wasn't Scurry. I didn't go into action immediately. Can I be honest with you? It was when I got to this part of the book where people started to identify with these characters. Then I began to understand that, the name of these characters actually is what they are. For Sniff is the character who would sniff out a situation before it happens. You're already observant, you have foresight. So Scurry is that character that sees the change and doesn't waste time and takes action immediately. So when I started to see or read these people give their experiences, I began to say, these characters actually mean what they mean. Yeah, okay. I was more like Hem. This was Carlos giving his own experience. I was more like Hem, who wanted to stay in familiar territory. The truth is, I didn't want to deal with the change. I didn't even want to see it. Michael, on the other hand, who felt like no time had passed since he and Carlos were close friends in school, asked, what are we talking about here, buddy? Carlos said, an unexpected change of jobs. Michael laughed. You were fired! Well, let's just say I didn't want to go out looking for new cheese. I thought I had a good reason why change shouldn't happen to me. Are we like that sometimes? Do you believe that there are certain things that should not change or should not happen to you? Like you don't deserve it. You don't deserve to, get kicked out of a job, or you don't deserve to, change a role that you've all your life known yourself to be in. You don't deserve any change. You just deserve to stay where you are. After all, you're good at what you do, so why change? I thought I had a good reason why change shouldn't happen to me. So I was pretty upset at the time. So this was somebody giving his own experience of how he loved his job, but he had to change. Something happened in the organization and he had to be removed. Some of their former classmates who had been quiet in the beginning felt more comfortable now and spoke up, including Frank, who had gone into the military. Hem reminds me of a friend of mine, Frank said. His department was closing down, but he didn't want to see it. They kept relocating his people. We all tried to talk to him about the many other opportunities that existed in the company for those who wanted to be flexible, but he didn't think he had to change. He was the only one who was surprised when his department closed. Now he's having a hard time adjusting to the change he didn't think should happen. Jessica said, I didn't think it should happen to me either, but my cheese had been moved more than once, especially in my personal life. But we can get to that later. Many in the group laughed except Nathan. Maybe that's the whole point. Nathan said, change happens to all of us. He added, I wish my family had heard the cheese story before this. Unfortunately, we didn't want to see changes coming in our business. And now it's too late. We're having to close so many of our stores. These are people sharing their real life experiences from the book. That surprised many in the group because they thought Nathan was lucky to be in a secure business he could depend on year after year. What happened? Jessica wanted to know. Our chain of small stores suddenly became old-fashioned. When the mega store came to town with its huge inventory and low prices, we just couldn't compete with that. I can see now that instead of being like Sniff and Scurry, we were like Hem. We stayed where we were and didn't change. We tried to ignore what was happening and now we are in trouble. We could have taken a couple of lessons from Hall because we certainly couldn't laugh at ourselves and change what we were doing. Laura, who had become a successful businesswoman, had been listening but had said very little until now. So when people started to give their own experiences, some people were like, okay, I'm not going to say anything. Maybe they weren't comfortable enough to share. But as people like Angela, Nathan, and Frank began to give their own, experiences, it made them, wanted to share. I thought about the story this afternoon too, Laura said. I wondered how I could be more like her and see what I'm doing wrong, laugh at myself, change, and do better. She said, I'm curious, how many here are afraid of change? No one responded, so she suggested, how about a show of hands? Only one hand went up. Well, it looks like we've got one honest person in our group, she said, and then continued, maybe you like this next question better. How many here think other people are afraid of change? Practically everyone raised their hands. Then they all started laughing. What does that tell us? Denial, Nathan answered. Sure, Michael admitted. Sometimes we are not even aware that we are afraid. I know I wasn't when I first heard the story. I loved the question, what would you do if you weren't afraid? Then Jessica added, well, what I got from the story is that change is happening everywhere and that I will do better when I can adjust to it quickly. So Frank got a turn to speak and he said, that's what I got out of the story. I tend to take myself too seriously. I noticed how Hall changed when he could finally laugh at himself and at what he was doing. No wonder he was called Hall. The group groaned at the obvious play on words. Angela asked, do you think that Hem ever changed and found new cheese? What do you think? Did you think that he ever changed? Eileen said, I think it did, while some others disagreed. Some people never change and they pay a price for it, and that's the truth. Most people are just stuck up on their old ways, and there's always a consequence for every action, for everything that we do in life, whether positive or negative. So when you're adamant to change, when you're just stuck up in your old ways and not allowing yourself to embrace change and embrace new ways, you just get really frustrated at the end of the day, and then you see how much growth you have missed out on when you choose not to embrace change. So these are some of the lessons that these people in the story, real life lessons that people were able to draw out from. Now, we all have our personal stories, we all have our personal journeys. So this is a time, the year is about to end, 2025 is over, and I feel like this is a perfect time for us to, get a blank slate, just get a blank slate, come correct with the things that we have done in 2025. How do you think your behaviors improved your growth and development? How do you think that your routines or your habits helped you become a better version of yourself? So as we step into a new year, 2026, it's supposed to be a moment for us to sit down honestly and say, I should do better in the new year. I should do better in the coming year. I hope that this book has been enriching to you because it has been to me. I will see you on our next book. Have a wonderful, wonderful new year ahead. Bye for now.